Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Podcast, where we wander through the quieter corners of your body. And tonight, we're going inside your mouth. Yes, that weird, warm cave behind your lips that works all day, crunching, talking, chewing gum, and occasionally blurting out awkward things during meetings. But once you fall asleep, everything changes. Your mouth clocks out, or at least it tries. As you settle into bed, your tongue flattens out like it's sighing in relief. Your teeth stop their daily grind, unless you're a sleep grinder, but we'll get to that. And your salivary glands wind down like the janitorial crew at a mall closing for the night. The mouth you've been using nonstop finally gets a break, or so it thinks. Here's a little reality check. You probably won't survive this part of the podcast without realizing how gross your mouth actually is after midnight. Not scary gross, but tiny war zone beneath your tongue kind of gross. Still, it's all part of the fascinating symphony that happens in the shadows. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight? Drop your location and your local time in the comments below. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're just starting to doze off, that cozy float between awake and moan, and meanwhile your jaw slackens, your lips part ever so slightly. Muscles that once kept everything tight and active all day long now start to relax. Your tongue no longer has a job. It just sits there, loafing. It's easy to forget that your mouth is made up of dozens of muscles that operate on tight coordination. When you're awake, they're sharp and fast. You yawn, you bite, you speak. But when you're asleep, the whole team goes into standby mode. Your chewing muscles, for instance, masseter and temporalis go almost entirely offline. Your tongue loses its firmness, slumps backward a little, and flattens out like a tired cat on a windowsill. And yet, the mouth isn't totally silent at night, because while you're sleeping, your body is still processing air, fluids, and subtle movements. You might breathe through your mouth, especially if you're congested or just naturally a mouth breather. That introduces a whole new airflow pattern into the chamber, one that dries out the inner terrain. Interestingly, in historical texts from as far back as ancient Egypt, healers wrote about the mouth being the gateway of decay and advised sleeping with the lips sealed shut. Some would even tie a thin linen ribbon across the lips before sleep, part superstition, part anti-snooze device. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic ritual or genuine hygiene technique. But back to your modern self. While the outer parts of your mouth slow down, inside, there's low-level motion. You might not notice, but you still occasionally swallow in your sleep, somewhere between once and twice per minute. This subtle act clears saliva from pooling and prevents you from drooling all over your pillow, though we both know that sometimes it fails. There's also a quiet little mechanism called the palatal reflex. It helps keep you from choking on your tongue. Yes, that's a thing, and subtly adjusts airflow during deep breathing. So even in slumber, your mouth isn't entirely off duty. It's just working the graveyard shift with fewer staff on the floor. Now let's zoom way in. You'll find that even in this resting state, your oral cavity is full of life. The mouth is home to over 700 species of microorganisms, many of which are still active during sleep. It's like a darkened city where most of the lights are out, but the alleyways are still alive with whispers. That's the setup. Your mouth, quiet on the surface, is ready to become a playground for microscopic creatures, ancient rituals, mysterious rhythms, and a few embarrassing truths about morning breath. And yes, we're going to talk about all of that, but first, your spit. Saliva doesn't get the respect it deserves. Sure, it's not glamorous. No one's writing love poems about drool, but without it, your mouth would basically be a dried-up desert full of angry bacteria with nothing to buffer them. During the day, your salivary glands produce a steady stream of this silky, slightly alkaline liquid, about 0.5 to 1.5 liters per day. Yes, you are basically a walking faucet, but at night, the tap shuts off. The shift from day to night saliva production is massive. As your body begins winding down for sleep, your sympathetic nervous system takes over, and saliva secretion plummets. especially the watery enzyme-rich kind that helps you digest food and fight off bacteria. What's left is a much thicker, mucus-like version, kind of like switching from running water to gravy. This change is intentional. Your body assumes you're no longer eating, chewing, or talking. Saliva? Optional. Unfortunately, bacteria don't get the memo. As the moisture level in your mouth drops, the pH starts to dip too. Acid-loving microbes, especially ones like Streptococcus mutans, your enamel's arch nemesis, start thriving in the low-flow environment. They begin to feed on leftover food particles, tiny sugars stuck in your gums, between teeth, or embedded in your tongue's soft surface. You don't feel it, but there is an invisible feast happening just behind your lips. It's like bacteria Coachella, and as they chow down, they release waste products, specifically sulfur-based compounds that smell, well, like morning breath. Ever wonder why your partner's sweet goodnight kiss turns into "What died in here" by sunrise? That's the sulfur party. Historians still argue whether ancient oral health rituals were rooted more in hygiene or superstition, but some nighttime practices in Ayurvedic medicine and traditional Chinese medicine were clearly trying to combat this drop in salivary flow. Warm oil rinses, pre-sleep herbal mouthwashes, even copper tongue scrapers. These were tools used before toothbrushes were even a twinkle in modern dentistry's eye. And fun fact, Cleopatra allegedly chewed aromatic tree resin before bed. It wasn't to freshen her breath for Mark Antony, it was to stimulate salivary flow, believed to cool the heart and moisten the soul, which honestly kind of sounds like a fancy way to say no halitosis. But here in your mouth, right now, things are just beginning to change. Your lips have gone dry. Maybe you feel a tiny crack forming at the corner. That's transepidermal water loss fancy science for you're drying out like a raisin. Meanwhile, your palate starts to feel stickier, your tongue settles deeper, and the moisture layer across your gums gets thinner. That saliva slowdown doesn't just mess with bad breath. It also messes with your immune system. You see, saliva contains antimicrobial agents like lysozyme, lactoferrin, and immunoglobulins that help keep the population of harmful bacteria in check. When levels drop overnight, those microscopic gatekeepers vanish, and your immune defense is suddenly undermanned. If you've ever woken up with a sore throat or mild gum irritation, it's likely because your nocturnal immune team took a nap too. This becomes especially noticeable in people with sleep apnea or those who snore. Mouth breathing all night accelerates evaporation, and the tongue often rests lower in the mouth, inviting even more bacteria-rich air to swirl around. Result? A totally parched, bacteria-friendly desert landscape by sunrise. And we haven't even talked about the salivary glands themselves. The three major pairs, parotid, submandibular, and sublingual, each play different roles. The parotids handle watery saliva for digestion, while the submandibulars and sublinguals provide that thicker stuff that coats and protects. At night, the submandibulars take the lead, but it's like running a kitchen with one sleepy chef and no sous chefs. The weirdest part? Some studies suggest that the pineal gland, the same one that produces melatonin to regulate your sleep-wake cycle, may also indirectly influence salivary rhythms. It's all tied to circadian biology. Your mouth, like your brain, your gut, and even your skin, runs on a clock. So while you're tucked under the covers, dreaming of who knows what, your salivary glands are slowing down, your bacterial colonies are picking up steam, and a very tiny battle is starting to play out in your now dry mouth. Hope you brushed. You'd think that with your mouth slowing down, shutting off the saliva taps, and going full nap mode, everything inside would follow suit. But no, that's when the night shift bacteria show up. These tiny critters, most of them invisible. Some of them, frankly, a little rude, start clocking in as soon as you drift off. During the day, your mouth is a battlefield of balance. Constant saliva production, swallowing, chewing, sipping water, maybe even the occasional breath mint. These all help keep bacteria in check. But at night, it's a bacteria free-for-all. The most notorious troublemakers are acid-producing bacteria like Streptococcus mutans and Lactobacillus. Their job? Ferment any leftover sugars in your mouth into acid. That acid, in turn, attacks the enamel, the shiny, beautiful shield on your teeth. Over time, if you're not brushing properly before bed, these bacteria can wear down that enamel like tiny vandals with pickaxes. And they're not alone. Fungi like Candida albicans, yep, there are fungal spores in your mouth too, also enjoy the late-night conditions, especially when things get dry. In a moist environment with fewer immune defenders, they're free to replicate in those cozy crevices behind your molars and under your tongue. It's like nightlife in Vegas, but microscopic and way less glamorous. What makes it even weirder is that your mouth isn't one homogeneous environment. It has zones, different regions of your mouth, your tongue, cheeks, gums, and teeth each host their own unique microbial communities. Your molars, for instance, are prime real estate for bacteria thanks to all their ridges and grooves. Your cheeks are relatively smooth and better protected. The tongue? That's a jungle. We'll get to that in the next section. Historically, even medieval physicians knew something funky was happening in the mouth overnight. Texts from 14th century Europe talk about the black tongue of sleep, and some monks believed that failing to rinse your mouth before bed could allow night spirits to take up residence. Historians still argue whether these writings were literal or metaphorical, but the microbial logic holds up frighteningly well. So what exactly are the bacteria doing? They're eating constantly. Whatever's left over, bits of starchy food, sugar molecules hiding between your teeth, dead skin cells from your gums, all of that becomes their midnight snack. And just like us, bacteria produce waste. In this case, volatile sulfur compounds, VISCs, like hydrogen sulfide and methyl mercaptan. They sound fancy, they smell like rot. This is where the phrase morning breath starts to get real. You may have noticed that no amount of mouthwash can truly prevent morning breath. That's because the bacteria are releasing these compounds inside biofilms, those slimy layers they build across your teeth and tongue like microscopic neighborhoods. Biofilms act like force fields. You'd need a miniature army to break them up, which is exactly what brushing and flossing do. During sleep, though, your body isn't brushing or flossing, so those biofilms thicken. Bacterial populations boom. And the smell? Well, it doesn't just stay in your mouth. VSCs can actually be absorbed into your bloodstream through your gums and exhaled back out through your lungs. So yeah, that awful breath might literally be coming from inside you. Let's get grosser. Some of these bacteria don't just smell bad, they cause chronic inflammation. Once the protective saliva barrier is gone, certain strains can penetrate tiny tears in your gums and trigger low-grade immune responses. Over time, if left unchecked, this contributes to gum disease and can even affect your cardiovascular system. Modern science backs this up. There's growing evidence that oral bacteria play a surprising role in heart health, with links to plaque buildup in arteries and even risk factors for stroke. But hey, no pressure while you're trying to sleep. On a weirder note, scientists studying astronauts in zero-gravity environments have observed accelerated bacterial growth in the mouth during sleep cycles in space. With less saliva movement and altered circadian cues, microbes become even more aggressive. NASA now includes enhanced oral hygiene routines as part of pre-bedtime protocols for astronauts on long missions. So yeah, space mouth is real, and it's a nightmare. Meanwhile, back here on Earth, your own little microbial zoo is thriving. The moment your head hits the pillow, the ecosystem behind your lips transitions into its own sort of ecosystem, a blend of moist surfaces, low oxygen pockets, reduced immune surveillance, and just enough leftover nutrients to keep things biologically exciting. And here's the kicker. No two mouths are alike. Your oral microbiome is as unique as your fingerprint. Everything from your diet, your genetics, your stress levels, even the type of toothpaste you use can influence which bacteria dominate during the night. So tonight, while you're sleeping soundly, remember your mouth is hosting its own little party. You're the unwilling Airbnb, and checkout time is, well, it depends on whether you brush in the morning. Let's talk about your tongue, not the poetic, metaphorical tongue of truth or silver tongue variety. The literal, pink, squishy, surprisingly muscular slab that lives behind your teeth and does everything from helping you pronounce onomatopoeia to holding hot soup just long enough to regret it. At night, that tongue turns into a jungle. Seriously, its surface is covered in papillae, those tiny bumps that give it its rough texture. In daylight, you don't notice them much, but under the microscope, they look like a rainforest canopy, deep grooves, hidden valleys, soft peaks. And in those hidden pockets, thousands, sometimes millions of microorganisms just vibing. While you're asleep, the tongue becomes the perfect spot for biofilm development. Bacteria stick to the papillae like moss on tree trunks. Food debris and dead skin cells settle into the crevices. Without the regular motion of speech, chewing, or swallowing, everything just marinates. And remember that saliva slowdown from earlier? Yeah, that makes it worse. The back of the tongue becomes especially dry, creating an anaerobic zone meaning low oxygen. That's bacteria heaven. Certain bacteria thrive in this kind of environment, and they're usually the stinkiest ones. Hello again, volatile sulfur compounds. It's not just bad breath we're talking about. This microbial jungle can actually reflect your overall health. Traditional Chinese medicine practitioners have examined the tongue for thousands of years, looking at color, coating, and moisture to diagnose internal imbalances. Historians still argue whether these diagnostics were placebo-based or rooted in real physiological insight, but modern science is catching up. Changes in tongue color and coating can in fact be early signs of dehydration, iron deficiency, or even liver issues. Also, ever woken up with a white film on your tongue? That's called a coated tongue. It's mostly harmless, but it's a visual sign that bacteria and dead cells have had a good old slumber party while you were dreaming. If it builds up over time, it can dull your sense of taste, contribute to halitosis, and if fungal overgrowth is involved, even signal the beginning of oral thrush. Don't worry, that sounds scarier than it usually is. Here's a quirky tidbit for your mental scrapbook. In ancient Rome, some physicians believed the tongue stored emotions and dreams. They recommended scraping it before bed to prevent restless visions. One Roman doctor even designed a tongue scraper made of polished bronze and swore it cured nightmares. Historians still argue whether this was early science or just another excuse for weird Roman metalwork. Modern tongue scrapers exist for a reason, though, and if you've never used one, the experience is oddly satisfying. A gentle scrape can remove much of the gunk and reduce the bacterial load. Some studies suggest that regular tongue cleaning improves taste sensitivity and reduces sulfur compound production. It's one of those health hacks that feels like snake oil until you try it. But here's where it gets really dreamy. Your tongue doesn't just lie flat during sleep. In deeper sleep stages, especially REM, it may twitch or subtly move as your body processes muscle memory or stress. Some researchers believe this is tied to the way we consolidate language, like your brain rehearsing syllables or names from your day. It's kind of sweet if you think about it. Your tongue might be dreaming of words it said, but it's also a little dangerous. In some cases, the tongue can become too relaxed and slump backward into the throat, especially in people with sleep apnea. This blocks the airway and leads to snoring, fragmented sleep, and even oxygen deprivation. It's one reason why sleep specialists often check tongue size and position when diagnosing snoring or apnea problems. Big tongues, not always cute. And then there's the question of movement. Do you ever wake up with your tongue stuck to the roof of your mouth? That's dehydration and a signal that your oral environment got a little too dry and sticky overnight. Conversely, waking up with a drool puddle suggests that your tongue hung open like a drawbridge and gravity took the wheel. Some people even talk in their sleep with full tongue articulation. That's right, your tongue might be monologuing while you snooze. Sleep talking isn't just brain activity. It requires muscle coordination, tongue movement, and some hilariously timed nonsense syllables. There are entire subreddits dedicated to people recording themselves sleep talking. "I told the banana not to vote," oh damn, is a fan favorite. Anyway, back to your jungle. Tonight, while you sleep, the tongue settles. Its surface becomes still. Biofilms build, anaerobic bacteria thrive. But it's also a space of quiet magic. Your tongue is resting yet still breathing, still dreaming, still echoing the day's conversations in tiny twitchy muscle movements. It's soft science, but it's your science. Morning breath, two innocent sounding words. One olfactory punch in the face. You know the drill. You roll over, open your mouth to say good morning, and boom, your partner flinches like you just breathed out dragon fire. Even you're a little offended. How did things go so wrong in your mouth in just a few hours? Let's break it down. Literally, morning breath is a result of the volatile sulfur compounds, VSCs, we've mentioned, which build up thanks to the bacteria that flourish during the nighttime saliva drought. But there's more to it than just bad bacteria vibes. The compounds most responsible for that ugh smell are hydrogen sulfide, smells like rotten eggs, methyl mercaptan, smells like garlic gone rogue, and dimethyl sulfide, smells like, let's just say, unwashed laundry. These gases aren't just sitting politely in your mouth, they're floating around, clinging to your tongue's jungle floor, nestled under your gum line, and coating the insides of your cheeks like invisible stink confetti. Yummy. And it turns out your mouth's nighttime chemistry plays a key role. As the pH in your mouth drops, thanks to saliva slowdown and acidic byproducts, bacteria that produce VSCs thrive. Think of them as tiny, invisible composters, turning food particles, proteins, and sloughed-off mouth cells into gaseous waste. It's basically a digestive factory operating in reverse. Historically, bad breath in the morning wasn't just a hygiene issue, it was a moral one. In medieval Europe, some religious figures believed that waking with foul breath was a sign of spiritual decay. Sin breath, they called it. Others thought it was caused by evil vapors rising from the stomach during sleep. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were symbolic metaphors or genuine early medicine, though evil vapors isn't entirely inaccurate in some cases. Because yes, sometimes morning breath is stomach-related. If you suffer from acid reflux or GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, digestive gases can travel up the esophagus and affect your mouth's odor while you sleep. Combine that with a dry mouth and you've got a full-on stink cocktail. But here's the real kicker. You don't smell your own morning breath. Not because you're immune to it, but because your olfactory sensors have adapted overnight. Your brain dials down scent sensitivity during sleep, especially to familiar odors. It's a biological defense against waking up every time your body emits something mildly gross. Convenient, right? There's also a little thing called olfactory adaptation. When you're exposed to a smell for a long period, like 8 hours of your own exhale, your brain just tunes it out, which is why your cat, who breathes in your open mouth every morning, might be way more aware than you are. Now let's toss in a few complicating factors. Alcohol before bed, huge contributor. It dehydrates your mouth and suppresses saliva production. Same with smoking, and even some common nighttime medications like antihistamines can dry you out, setting the stage for sulfur compounds to take center stage. Then there's your diet. High-protein foods, garlic, onions, and dairy can linger in your mouth and gut long after dinner. These compounds seep into the bloodstream, pass into your lungs, and are then exhaled, giving morning breath that extra "I licked a gym sock" vibe. And yet, despite all this chaos, your body tries to help. Low-level swallowing, subtle tongue movements, even unconscious lip-smacking help reduce bacterial buildup. You may also occasionally wake up and shift position, which changes airflow and mouth positioning. But if you breathe through your mouth while sleeping, you're inviting the desert in. Mouth breathing evaporates any remaining saliva and allows more airborne bacteria to enter and settle in. Studies have even shown that people who breathe through their mouths at night have significantly higher rates of tooth decay and gum inflammation. Here's a fringy but fascinating tidbit. Some sleep optimization gurus tape their mouths shut at night, not in a horror movie way, but using skin-safe strips to force nasal breathing. They claim it reduces snoring, increases oxygenation, and dramatically cuts down morning breath. Whether this is health breakthrough or TikTok placebo, historians and doctors still argue. But back to you wrapped in your blanket, deep in sleep, unaware that your tongue is stewing and your gums are being serenaded by gas-emitting microbes. There's no need to panic. Morning breath is normal, expected, a badge of biological honor. It means you're alive, breathing, and have the microbiome to prove it. And if you really hate it, brush your tongue. Use a gentle tongue scraper before bed. Rinse with water, not an alcohol-based mouthwash. And maybe skip that late-night garlic bread. Because your mouth, it remembers. Your teeth are the unsung heroes of the night. All day long, they chomp, chew, crunch. And if you're anything like the average snacker, grind through about 1,000 jaw movements a day. But at night, your teeth aren't supposed to do anything. No chewing, no clenching, no heroics. But they still show up to work. See, while you're blissfully unaware and mid-dream about being late to high school in your pajamas, your teeth are under siege. Those bacterial partygoers we've talked about, they're not just loitering, they're launching acid attacks on your enamel. Enamel is the hardest substance in the human body. Stronger than bone, stronger than steel, ounce for ounce. But here's the kicker. It has no living cells. That means it can't repair itself. Once the enamel is gone, it's gone. So while you're catching Z's, your teeth are trying to hold the line against acid erosion and bacterial sneak attacks, using nothing but their structure and the tiny traces of remaining saliva. And when that acid gets serious, say, if you went to bed without brushing after a sugary dessert, it starts to soften enamel within minutes. The pH in your mouth drops below 5.5, the danger zone, and calcium begins leaching from your teeth. Silent erosion, no pain, no alarm bells, just slow decay. Historically, ancient civilizations had a surprising understanding of this. The Etruscans, for example, used gold wires to bind teeth and prevent them from shifting. An Ayurvedic text from 2000 BCE recommended chewing sticks from specific trees. So before sleep, not just to clean the teeth, but to rebalance oral pH. Historians still argue whether these were scientific insights or just lucky guesses wrapped in ritual. Today, we know tooth decay is a nighttime affair. That's why dentists emphasize brushing before bed, not just in the morning. Because if you leave food behind, even tiny crumbs, it fuels bacteria for hours while your mouth defenses are on sabbatical. But your teeth aren't just dealing with bacteria. Sometimes the threat comes from you. Let's talk about bruxism, aka grinding your teeth in your sleep. If your partner has ever nudged you awake because it sounded like a squirrel gnawing drywall, congrats. You're probably a bruxer. This unconscious grinding can wear down enamel, crack molars, inflame the temporomandibular joint on TMJ, and lead to headaches or jaw pain. And why does it happen? Stress mostly. Some psychologists believe your subconscious mind processes tension physically, and grinding is one gnarly outlet. Others suggest it's linked to airway obstruction or misaligned bites. Theories abound, but what we do know is that millions of people do it, many without ever realizing. Some don't find out until their dentist raises an eyebrow during a checkup. Fun fringe fact. In ancient Greece, people believed nighttime tooth grinding was a sign of demonic possession or guilt. If someone clenched their teeth too much in sleep, they'd sometimes be given poppy seed oil before bed to soften the mind. Historians still argue whether this was prototherapy or just a dreamy excuse to sneak in a sedative. Modern dentistry, though, has its solutions. Mouth guards, stress management, meditation, and in some cases, believe it or not, Botox injections to relax the jaw muscles. Yes, people are now putting tiny doses of botulinum toxin into their masseters to stop midnight grinding. And it works. Back to your teeth. Even if you're not a grinder, your enamel is still vulnerable, especially if your diet's acidic soda, citrus, vinegary snacks, and especially if you brush too hard before bed, which can actually cause microabrasions that bacteria exploit during sleep. Gentle circular brushing motions, my friend. Pretend your teeth are made of porcelain and you're cleaning a teacup from 1850. And while enamel can't regenerate, your body does try to help in subtle ways. Minerals like calcium and phosphate in your saliva help remineralize weakened spots, particularly during lighter stages of sleep when your body isn't as focused on dreaming about talking raccoons. But you have to meet it halfway by reducing acid load, brushing before bed, flossing out trapped food, and maybe giving your molars a little gratitude. Because tonight, while you're dreaming, your teeth are holding the line. Ah yes, dreams and grinding. The weirdest tag team since peanut butter and pickles. While your body lays still under the blankets, Your brain is throwing raves behind your eyelids. REM sleep is wild. Your heart rate flutters, your breathing changes, and your muscles go limp, except for the ones that aren't supposed to. Like you guessed it, your jaw. Bruxism, grinding or clenching your teeth at night, is deeply linked with stress and, oddly enough, dreams. In fact, some sleep researchers believe that intense, vivid dreams often coincide with bursts of jaw tension. You may not even remember the dream, but your molars sure do. Your temporomandibular joint, TMJ, that little hinge just in front of your ears, is what lets your jaw move smoothly in all directions. But when you clench hard, especially during REM, you're putting up to 250 pounds of pressure per square inch on your teeth. That's enough force to crack a walnut or a filling. It's like your brain is subconsciously chewing on your problems. And it's not always full grinding. Some people do this strange jaw wiggling or tap their teeth together rhythmically. Others clench their jaws and hold for minutes, locked in invisible tension. You're unaware, but your dental wear tells the tale. Here's a fringy historical nugget. In ancient Japan, samurai were taught to clench their teeth during sleep to guard the soul. They believed the jaw was a gate, and leaving it open during dreams made you vulnerable to evil spirits. Historians still argue whether this was spiritual metaphor or an early attempt at coping with sleep bruxism and wartime stress. In modern times, the explanations are more neurological. Your brain processes unresolved tension through muscle memory. The same way your eyelids flutter during dreams, your jaw might rehearse a tight-lipped response to an angry email. Chewing motion is deeply wired into your brainstem. It doesn't need conscious thought, so it becomes the go-to muscle movement when your subconscious is in overdrive. And here's something even weirder. Some people chew in their sleep, like actual chewing motions. No food, no flavor, just rhythmic muscle contractions mimicking eating. This is known as sleep-related rhythmic movement disorder. Catchy name, right? And it's rare but real. It's most common in children but can continue into adulthood, especially during periods of extreme stress or emotional exhaustion. Imagine dreaming of pizza and actually chewing it. No calories, but plenty of jaw fatigue. And while we're here, let's address a cousin behavior. Nocturnal tongue chewing. Some people wake up with sore sides of their tongue and wonder if they bit themselves during a dream. Usually the answer is yes. It's often a reflexive response to stress, sleep disturbances, or get this, habitual mental rehearsal, as if your brain keeps practicing how to shut you up. Then there's the connection between jaw tension and the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve, the body's longest cranial nerve, runs from your brainstem down through your gut. It plays a huge role in relaxation and emotional regulation. And guess what? Clenching your jaw inhibits vagal tone. So if you're grinding, you're quite literally cutting off your own relaxation signal. It's the body's version of hitting reply all on an email and instantly regretting it. Interestingly, traditional Chinese medicine considers the jaw a key holding point for unspoken words and suppressed emotion. So the idea that you chew or clench in your sleep isn't just physical, it's emotional. You might be literally grinding your teeth over what you didn't say. Solutions? Sure. Mouth guards can help. Magnesium before bed might ease muscle tension. Practicing box breathing or gentle jaw massage before sleep can lower your sympathetic response. But maybe, just maybe, you also need to have that awkward conversation you've been avoiding. Because the dreams will keep coming, and so will the grinding. Meanwhile, your poor molars are playing defense. Your TMJ is working overtime. And your subconscious is chewing on every thought you refuse to process during the day. So tonight, while your body sleeps and your mind wanders, just remember, your jaw has a story to tell. It might be time to listen. Let's zoom out from the molars and the microbes and take a moment to appreciate the architecture of your mouth. Not just the teeth and tongue, but the whole soft, squishy, slightly damp landscape that quietly shapes your entire breathing and sleeping experience. Start with the palate, your mouth ceiling. It's divided into the hard palate at the front and the soft palate in the back. During the day, you don't pay it much attention. But at night, the soft palate becomes a crucial player in your airway drama. As your body enters deeper stages of sleep, muscle tone throughout your body begins to relax, including in your face and mouth. Your jaw slackens. Your tongue falls slightly backward. And your soft palate, it droops like a tired curtain. If everything lines up well, air still flows through smoothly while you sleep. But if your airway is a bit too narrow or your soft tissues too relaxed, you get resistance. That's when things start to vibrate. And boom, snoring. Snoring is more than just an annoyance. It's a mechanical symphony of floppy tissue, airflow, and vibration. And guess what's often leading the choir? That soft palate, especially when it flutters with each breath like a sleepy sail in the wind. There's even a rare condition called palatal fluttering, where the soft palate vibrates so erratically that it creates a rhythmic clicking sound during sleep. Imagine your mouth trying to beatbox while unconscious. Delightful. Historically, snoring wasn't always seen as a health problem. In some ancient cultures, loud snoring was viewed as a sign of deep, nourishing rest. Ancient Egyptian writings describe the sleeper who rumbles as being blessed by the god of dreams. But historians still argue whether that was genuine medical belief or a polite way of saying Uncle Merneptah's snoring could wake the pyramids. In modern sleep medicine, though, snoring is a red flag. Not always dangerous on its own, but often a sign of obstructive sleep apnea, OSA, a condition where your airway partially collapses during sleep, reducing oxygen flow and causing microarousals, tiny wake-ups you don't even remember, but that wreck your rest. And who's often the culprit? The soft tissues of the mouth, the tongue, the uvula, the soft palate. Basically, your mouth becomes its own worst roommate. Even the shape of your dental arch can influence this. Narrow arches and high palates are linked to a higher risk of sleep-disordered breathing. That's why orthodontics isn't just about pretty teeth anymore. It's about opening up the airway real estate. But back to the palate. It's not just a ceiling. It's a sensory map. The roof of your mouth is rich with nerves that detect texture, temperature, and pressure. That's why you can feel the fizz of soda on your palate or wince when hot pizza cheese gets stuck there, aka pizza burn, officially tragic. At night, these nerves are still active, albeit dulled. Some researchers suggest that stimulation of the palate during sleep may affect dream content, especially sensory-rich dreams involving food, taste, or even memory. Think about the last time you dreamed of ice cream or kissing someone. Odds are your brain lit up those palatal pathways while replaying those sensations. There's also a connection to nasal breathing, which a spoiler your body wants you to do at night. When you breathe through your nose, the air is warmed, humidified, and filtered before reaching your lungs. The palate plays a supporting role here, helping guide airflow and maintain pressure balance. Mouth breathing, on the other hand, it bypasses all that, dries out the tissues, increases snoring, or reduces nitric oxide production, which plays a role in oxygen efficiency. And as we've established, it also makes your breath smell like fermented socks by morning. That's why many holistic sleep experts advocate for myofunctional therapy, a fancy way of saying train your mouth muscles. Exercises to tone the tongue, tighten the soft palate, and improve nasal breathing. There's a whole subculture of people doing exaggerated chewing motions and tongue push-ups before bed. Sounds weird, works well. Want a fringe anecdote? In 19th century France, a dentist named Pierre Fauchard swore by training the palate with a silver spoon. He'd gently press it along the palate of young children to widen their arches and cultivate ideal breathing. It was equal parts orthodontics and old-school biohacking. Historians still argue whether this was genius or just gently medieval. Either way, your mouth is no passive hole at night. It's a dynamic space with muscles, nerves, tissue, and structure, all of which quietly shape your airflow, influence your dreams, and determine whether you wake up refreshed or feeling like you've been chewing bricks. So tonight, as your tongue drops, your jaw loosens, and your palate softens, remember, your mouth is a soft machine, tuned by evolution, shaped by culture, and still quietly evolving while you sleep. Let's shine a sleepy spotlight on one of your body's least appreciated MVPs, saliva. Yep, spit, drool, mouth juice. Whatever you call it, this unsung liquid legend is doing the absolute most while you dream about showing up to work in your underwear. By day, saliva seems mundane. You barely notice it unless you're mid-yawn or chewing gum. But at night, the production dips drastically. And that's when you start to realize just how much your body relies on it to maintain balance in your mouth. Let's set the stage. During the day, your salivary glands pump out nearly 1 to 1.5 liters of saliva daily, enough to fill a wine bottle, give or take. This flow helps wash away food debris, neutralize acids, deliver essential minerals like calcium and phosphate, and honestly, just keep everything pleasantly moist. But once you fall asleep, especially during deep sleep stages, the body signals to those glands, shut it down. The result? A parched, quiet battleground. With less saliva, bacteria get cozy. Acid levels rise. You might wake up with that tacky, cotton-mouth feeling like someone lined your cheeks with flannel. Saliva isn't just water, by the way. It's loaded with antimicrobial agents like lysozyme, lactoferrin, and secretory IgA, tiny chemical bodyguards that work silently to keep the peace. When saliva disappears at night, your defenses are effectively lowered, like turning off the security system at the museum before a heist. Historically, saliva's value was well known. Ancient Ayurvedic practitioners considered saliva the elixir of life, claiming it contained healing properties and should never be wasted. Some early Chinese texts even described practices where monks would collect morning saliva and use it in meditation, believing it helped preserve qi. Historians still argue whether this was based on actual health benefits or symbolic spiritual practices, but saliva definitely had a fan club. Back to science. Dry mouth, also known as xerostomia, isn't just annoying, it's a real risk. It increases chances of tooth decay, gum disease, oral infections like candidiasis, and of course, the dreaded morning dragon breath. And while it can happen naturally, some people are more prone due to medications, especially antihistamines, antidepressants, and blood pressure meds, mouth breathing, or dehydration. Want to know something kind of gross and cool? Saliva is a mirror for your body's internal state. Changes in hormone levels, stress, hydration, and even sleep quality can affect its composition. Researchers can now measure cortisol, melatonin, and even reproductive hormones like estrogen from a single spit sample. Your mouth is basically a biolab in disguise. Speaking of melatonin, your saliva is actually one of the best places to detect its rise in the evening. As melatonin levels increase in the bloodstream, they also appear in saliva timed with your body's wind down for sleep. It's one of the many ways your mouth and sleep cycles are secretly synced. Then there's taste. Ever wonder why food tastes off when you're sick or exhausted? Saliva plays a huge role in carrying flavor molecules to your taste buds. Less saliva equals duller taste. That's why late-night snacking sometimes feels weird or unsatisfying. Your flavor-carrying river has dried to a trickle. And here's a bizarre but real fringe fact. In ancient Rome, it was believed that the first saliva of the morning, uncorrupted by food or water, could ward off evil spirits. Some folks even spat on their hands before touching their children, believing it was protective. Historians still argue whether that was early germ theory or just glorified loogie lore. In modern terms, we know the morning spit is rich in bacteria, exfoliated cells, and proteins that have been marinating in your closed mouth all night. If you've ever noticed that distinct first taste of the day flavor, it's not your imagination. It's real, and it's got texture. But here's the gentle twist. Saliva isn't just defense, it's repair. It delivers enzymes that remineralize enamel, soothe inflamed tissues, and help regenerate cells. Some components even aid in wound healing. Cut your mouth, it heals faster than a similar cut on your skin, thanks to, you guessed it, spit. So tonight, while your salivary glands power down and your mouth becomes a cozy desert for bacteria, just know you're missing your silent helper, your soft, invisible river, your microbial peacekeeper. Saliva may be absent while you sleep, but its legacy lingers on your tongue, your teeth, and your dreams. Let's slip even deeper now into the unsung hallway that connects your mouth to your dreams, your throat. Technically, we're talking about the pharynx, a funnel-shaped muscular tube that's like a backstage corridor for everything you swallow, breathe, and mumble while sleep-talking. It divides into three regions: nasopharynx behind your nose, oropharynx behind your mouth, and laryngopharynx, where decisions get made about food versus air. During the day, it's a busy intersection, but at night, it's complicated. When you fall asleep, muscle tone throughout the body decreases. That includes the muscles supporting the pharynx. They go from firm bouncer to sleepy intern, and the airway becomes floppy, narrow, and just a little bit dramatic. This is where snoring really gets its moment. As air moves through the relaxed tissues of the oropharynx, it causes vibrations, especially if your tongue has collapsed backward or your soft palate is flapping in the breeze. That flapping noise, it's your throat's version of a tuba solo, and it varies from gentle purring to full-on, house-rattling bear growls. But here's where it gets sneakier. Micro-arousals. Each time your airway partially closes, your body panics just enough to wake your brain slightly. Not fully conscious, but enough to interrupt deep sleep. These tiny wake-ups can happen dozens, even hundreds of times a night in people with obstructive sleep apnea, OSA. And the crazy part? Most people don't remember a single one. You just wake up groggy, confused, and wondering why you're so tired after 8 hours in bed. Historically, snoring was considered a blessing or a curse depending on your culture. In some Native American tribes, snoring was believed to help ward off spirits during sleep. Its sound was thought to confuse wandering souls. In contrast, Victorian England saw snoring as a moral failing. Gentle women were instructed to sleep face right with tightened lips to avoid the horror of producing sound. Historians still argue whether this was etiquette or just anxiety in corsets. Back to your modern throat. At night, it's also involved in nocturnal swallowing, a quiet little reflex that helps clear accumulated saliva and prevent it from pooling too long. But this reflex slows significantly. So if your mouth is dry and saliva production is already down, your throat becomes a sticky hallway. One that collects gunk, harbors bacteria, and sometimes causes you to wake up mid-gag like you just dreamed you were choking on a feather. And then there's post-nasal drip. Sounds gross, feels grosser. Mucus from your sinuses trickles down the back of your throat while you sleep, especially if you're lying on your back. This can lead to coughing, throat clearing, and that charming frog voice when you first wake up. If you snore or breathe through your mouth or have allergies, the problem gets stickier. But here's the twist, that mucus, it's also protective. It traps bacteria, allergens, and airborne particles that sneak in while you sleep. It's basically your throat's janitorial staff. Annoying, yes, but essential. Want a quirky tidbit? In ancient Chinese medicine, the throat was considered the gate of qi, the place where breath and nourishment meet. Throat discomfort was believed to reflect imbalances between yin and yang forces. Herbal tonics were prescribed not just for pain, but to restore harmony to your inner breath path. Historians still argue whether this concept was purely symbolic or an early understanding of how inflammation and breath affect the whole body. And there's one more character to introduce, the epiglottis, that little flap of cartilage that covers your windpipe when you swallow. It's like the nightclub bouncer deciding who gets into the lungs. During the day, it's on high alert. At night, it chills, but it doesn't clock out. Its relaxed posture sometimes contributes to momentary airway closures, especially if you fall asleep in weird positions. Speaking of which, how you sleep matters here. Back sleeping tends to let everything in your throat slump backward tongue, soft palate, even the epiglottis. Side sleeping can reduce snoring and help keep airways more open. That's why sleep studies often recommend positional therapy before jumping into CPAP machines or fancy mouth devices. Your throat is also full of nerve endings, particularly connected to the vagus nerve, hello again, which means irritation or inflammation here can stimulate stress responses even during sleep. Chronic throat clearing, coughing, or tension can trigger microstress surges that ripple through your sleep cycle like tiny storms. So tonight, while you sleep, your throat becomes both pathway and protector. It juggles airflow, muffles snores, flirts with mucus, and if you're lucky, lets you snore quietly enough not to wake the cat. It's a soft tunnel of velvet and nerves, and it does so much more than you ever imagine. Let's take a detour now, past the teeth and throat, and give center stage to one of the most powerful players in your sleep time mouth story, your tongue. It's strong, It's stubborn. And at night, it's got a secret life. By day, your tongue is a multitasking marvel. It helps you talk, taste, chew, swallow. And if you're multilingual, flip between entire languages without breaking a sweat. But once you fall asleep, it becomes something else entirely. A muscular jellyfish adrift in your mouth, prone to sinking, drifting, and sometimes sabotaging your airflow. Let's start with anatomy. Your tongue is actually a bundle of 8 interwoven muscles, making it incredibly flexible and strong. It never gets tired, ever. It's one of the most endurance-capable muscles in your entire body. But when you sleep, your tongue takes a break from active duty. Muscle tone decreases, and the back of the tongue tends to relax downward and backward. In most people, that's fine. But for others, especially if you sleep on your back, it can partially block your airway. That little saggy moment, it's enough to cause snoring, disrupted sleep, or even mild forms of sleep apnea. The phenomenon is so common there's a name for it: posterior tongue collapse. And it's one of the top reasons why some people feel exhausted even after 8 hours in bed. Your tongue, of all things, is literally standing between you and a deep, refreshing night's sleep. And the weird thing, you don't feel it happening. You don't choke. You don't fully wake. You just slide in and out of deep sleep like a smartphone buffering at 3 a.m. Historically, ancient yogic texts paid surprising attention to the tongue. In practices like Kachari Mudra, yogis would train themselves to curl the tongue back into the nasal cavity to seal the mouth and redirect energy. Extreme, yes. But historians still argue whether these were symbolic rituals or early attempts at manipulating oral airflow during deep meditation and pseudo-sleep states. Let's pivot to taste. Yes, even at night, your tongue retains some sensitivity. Though dulled by reduced saliva and lower sensory input, your taste buds remain active. Ever woken up with a weird flavor in your mouth? That's your tongue reporting in, despite being offline all night. Bacteria, pH changes, dietary leftovers. Your taste buds quietly log it all. But there's more. Some studies suggest that dream content can be influenced by oral sensations. For example, intense dreams about eating, kissing, or speaking are often linked to subtle tongue and facial muscle activation. Your tongue becomes a bridge between dream perception and physical response. Fun fact, during REM sleep, the body's muscles become temporarily paralyzed, a phenomenon called REM atonia. But the tongue, it sometimes twitches. These tiny movements have been recorded during sleep studies and are believed to be connected to dream-related speech or subconscious memory rehearsal. And then there's tongue thrusting, a subtle, often unconscious habit where the tongue presses against the front teeth. At night, this can continue, especially in people who already do it while awake. Over time, it can affect tooth alignment, cause jaw fatigue, and even influence speech patterns. Who knew your tongue had orthodontic power? Oh, and let's not forget about mouth taping. Yep. In the wellness corners of the internet, people are gently taping their lips closed before bed to promote nasal breathing and keep their tongues in the right position, flat against the palate, not slumped in the throat. Some swear it improves sleep quality, reduces dry mouth, and even sharpens morning focus. Others call it DIY hostage cosplay. Historians still argue whether it's a health trend or just another viral dare. But the science does suggest that tongue posture matters. A tongue resting on the roof of the mouth supports a wider palate and better breathing. One that collapses downward narrows the airway and invites all sorts of midnight nonsense. That's why certain therapies like myofunctional therapy focus on training your tongue to hold itself like a sleepy little plank, even when you're unconscious. So tonight, while your arms lie limp and your breath flows slow, remember that your tongue is drifting in that inky darkness behind your teeth. It might twitch, it might flatten, it might even block the breeze. But it's not lazy, it's just misunderstood, because when your tongue sleeps, it whispers secrets into your dreams. Now let's float gently into a quieter, deeper realm of your nighttime anatomy, the nerves quietly threading their way through your face, your mouth, and your dreams. If your mouth were a city, nerves would be the fiber optic cables running under the pavement, carrying messages, sensations, reflexes, and emotions 24/7, even while you sleep. And one of the biggest VIPs of this sleepy nerve club? The vagus nerve. We've met the vagus before. It's the longest cranial nerve in your body, connecting your brainstem to your gut, lungs, heart, and yes, your mouth and throat. It's part of your parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for the rest and digest mode that helps you feel safe, sleepy, and soothed. At night, as you transition into deeper stages of sleep, the vagus nerve hums quietly. It helps slow your heart rate, soften your breath, and regulate saliva production. But it also has subtle influence over your oral muscles, especially in the soft palate and vocal cords. When vagal tone is strong and regulated, everything from swallowing to breathing becomes smoother. Even snoring can ease. But if your vagus nerve is stressed, sluggish, or overstimulated, you might clench, wake up dry-mouthed, or feel like your breath never quite finds its rhythm. Amazingly, one of the easiest ways to stimulate this nerve is through mouth-related activities. Humming, gargling, slow chewing, even holding your breath gently. That's why some sleep experts recommend humming a tune while brushing your teeth or doing gentle throat stretches before bed. Fringe tip: some ancient healing practices involve toning, the chanting of low vowel sounds, ooh, ah, ee, as a pre-sleep ritual. Historians still argue whether this was spiritual cleansing or just brilliant nerve regulation in disguise. Beyond the vagus, there's the trigeminal nerve, the largest cranial nerve, branching out across your cheeks, jaw, and teeth. At night, this nerve is still monitoring muscle tension and sending subtle feedback to your brain. If you grind your teeth, clench your jaw, or experience facial twitching during dreams, the trigeminal nerve is lighting up like a sleepy airport runway. And if it's irritated, you might wake up with jaw pain, tooth sensitivity, or even a vague sense of facial tightness. Now let's whisper about another behind-the-scenes star, the hypoglossal nerve. It controls your tongue's movements, and yes, it's still active while you sleep. Not because your tongue is breakdancing, hopefully, but because micro-adjustments are constantly being made to keep your airway open. Even tiny shifts in tongue posture can send messages via this nerve to correct airflow during light arousals. Some people even undergo hypoglossal nerve stimulation therapy, a modern treatment for sleep apnea. A small implant sends signals to this nerve to move the tongue forward slightly during inhalation, keeping the airway clear. It's like giving your tongue a gentle prod every time it starts to slack off on the job. Want to go even deeper? Your facial nerve, the one responsible for expressions, also plays a quiet role in sleep. Ever dream of laughing or crying? Those micro movements start with this nerve. Even in sleep, it may activate subtle twitches in the corners of your lips, cheeks, or eyebrows, tiny physical echoes of emotional dreams. Some researchers believe these nerve twitches during REM are part of the body's emotional processing, like little lightning bolts of memory assorting. Now, for the truly odd, there's a rare sleep disorder called REM sleep behavior disorder, RBD, where the body doesn't fully paralyze during REM, allowing the sleeper to act out their dreams. In some cases, people have spoken full sentences, chewed phantom food, or even sung aloud, all thanks to their facial and mouth nerves firing off unchecked. Historically, such behavior was often misinterpreted as sleepwalking possession or divine prophecy. In 15th century Europe, people who spoke in tongues during sleep were sometimes seen as channels of divine wisdom. Others were tragically burned at the stake. Historians still argue whether these episodes were neurological conditions or misunderstood sleep stages wrapped in fear. Today, we know the body is meant to go still. These mouth and face nerves should operate in whispers, not shouts. So tonight, while your eyes close and your dreams stir, a quiet network of nerves continues its work behind the scenes, regulating, restoring, keeping your lips from drooling too much, and making sure your tongue doesn't fall asleep on the job. It's your body's own soft circuitry, sleep-tuned, dream-wired, and always humming. As your mouth settles into the quiet rhythm of sleep, another subtle player enters the scene: your breath and how your mouth shapes it. You might think breathing is mostly a nose thing, and ideally it is. But for a significant chunk of the population, especially during sleep, the mouth takes over. And when it does, everything changes. Mouth breathing at night is more than a quirky habit. It transforms the entire ecosystem inside your mouth. When air flows through the open mouth instead of the nose, it dries out oral tissues, disrupts saliva balance, and turns your gentle sleep cave into a wind tunnel. The consequences? Dry mouth, bad breath, increased bacterial growth, inflamed gums, and more frequent cavities. But that's just the beginning. Let's start with the why. Why does your body choose the mouth over the nose while you sleep? The main culprit is often nasal congestion, thanks to allergies, colds, sinus shape, or even just lying down. When your nasal passages narrow or get blocked, your brain reroutes airflow through the mouth to keep you breathing. It's survival first, comfort second. Once the mouth opens, though, things get real. Oxygen absorption becomes less efficient. Unlike the nose, which adds humidity and filters pathogens, the mouth offers no resistance, so air rushes in faster, drier, and colder. Your lungs adapt, but your mouth? It suffers. Historically, ancient medical traditions in India and Tibet warned against sleeping with the mouth open. Ayurvedic texts even refer to night mouth breathing as drawing in death wind. Dramatic, yes, but their observations weren't entirely off. Mouth breathing disrupts the balance of prana life force and was believed to drain vitality over time. Historians still argue whether this was metaphorical or a surprisingly accurate read of sleep physiology. Back in the science lab, we now know that mouth breathing affects sleep quality, especially by reducing nitric oxide intake. This gas produced in your nasal passages helps expand blood vessels, improve oxygenation, and regulate immune response. Bypass the nose, and you miss out on this secret bedtime supplement. And there's more. Mouth breathing has been linked to changes in facial structure, particularly in children. Long-term night breathing through the mouth can lead to narrower dental arches, longer faces, recessed chins, and even speech issues. That's why sleep specialists, dentists, and orthodontists now collaborate to address breathing patterns, not just crooked teeth. But even as an adult, you're not immune. When you breathe through your mouth at night, your CO2 levels drop slightly more than they should. This disrupts the oxygen-carbon dioxide balance your body carefully maintains. You might not gasp awake, but your body senses the imbalance and reacts by micro-waking, tossing, turning, and ironically snoring even louder. Enter the world of nasal retraining. Yep, it's a thing. People retrain themselves to breathe through their noses at night. How? By using saline rinses, breathing strips, nasal dilators, and yes, mouth tape. Again with the tape. Don't worry, it's gentle medical grade stuff, not duct tape from your garage. And for those who want the elite level routine, there's Buteyko breathing, a method developed by a Russian doctor in the mid-20th century to improve breathing efficiency. It emphasizes light, nasal breathing with the lips sealed, even while sleeping. The practice has a devoted following among insomniacs, athletes, and anxious overthinkers. Want something truly strange? Some ancient tribes reportedly trained babies to keep their mouths closed while sleeping by gently molding their lips shut with clay or fabric. The goal? Stronger jaws and better breathing. Modern science frowns on the clay part, but the concept? Surprisingly valid. Historians still argue whether it was cosmetic vanity or early respiratory health wisdom. Let's bring it back to you here now, curled up in bed. Your lips might be slightly parted. Maybe your jaw has slipped open. Maybe you're snoring softly, oblivious to the desert forming in your mouth. Or maybe, without even realizing it, your tongue has gently risen to press against your palate, sealing your airway just enough to keep things quiet. This balance between airflow and stillness, between open mouth and closed can, define the entire quality of your night. And it's not just physical. Mouth breathing is linked to anxiety, both as a cause and a symptom. Shallow, fast, open-mouth breathing keeps your nervous system slightly alert. Nasal breathing, by contrast, stimulates the vagus nerve and deepens parasympathetic activity. So the next time you catch yourself with dry lips, sore gums, or that scratchy morning voice, think of your mouth like a sleepy cave meant to stay closed, quiet, sealed, protected. Let the air flow through the the way your body was designed. Your dreams, your throat, and your entire circadian rhythm will thank you. As the rest of your body continues to drift deeper into the night, we find ourselves nearing one of the most peculiar, underrated marvels of the human mouth, your microbiome. You may already know about gut bacteria, the armies of microscopic tenants living in your intestines. But your oral microbiome? That's a whole metropolis of its own, teeming with over 700 different species of bacteria, fungi, and viruses. Your mouth is like Times Square, just with fewer tourists and more plaque. And guess what? It doesn't clock out when you do. Even while you sleep, this invisible ecosystem is buzzing. Microbes are reproducing, metabolizing, battling for dominance, and throwing microscopic house parties on your tongue, between your teeth, and under your gums. They thrive in the dark, moist warmth of your mouth's overnight slumber. Here's where it gets even dreamier, or nightmarish, depending on your dental hygiene. At night, your saliva production plummets, as we've mentioned. Saliva is like the security guard that keeps these microbes in check. When it disappears, certain bacteria, especially the ones responsible for bad breath and tooth decay, get bold. They multiply. They strategize. And by morning, they've laid down a thin, sticky film called biofilm, better known to you as morning plaque. Now picture this, a city skyline forming along your gum-lined layers of bacteria stacking up like glassy office buildings. That's biofilm. It's organized, it's structured, and it's really hard to evict once it's settled in. Brushing in the morning becomes less about cleaning and more about dismantling a full-blown bacterial civilization. Historically, ancient cultures knew something was going on. Egyptian papyri from over 5,000 years ago mention using honey, dates, and natron, a type of salt, to clean the mouth and banish demons of rot. In medieval Japan, nobles chewed twigs soaked in aromatic oils to quiet the breath ghosts. Historians still argue whether these rituals were practical, spiritual, or early oral microbiome management. What's wild is that not all these microbes are bad. In fact, many of them are essential. The oral microbiome plays a major role in digestion, immune defense, and even mood regulation through the gut-brain axis, a communication superhighway linking your mouth, gut, and brain. Bacteria in your mouth kickstart digestion before food even hits your stomach. They even interact with your endocrine system, influencing hormone levels and inflammation. The flip side, when the balance goes wrong, due to poor oral hygiene, stress, antibiotics, or chronic mouth breathing, it can trigger a dysbiosis. That's when the bad microbes outnumber the good. Not only does this lead to cavities and gum disease, but researchers are now linking oral dysbiosis to systemic conditions like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and even Alzheimer's. Yes, what happens in your mouth doesn't stay in your mouth. Bacteria can slip into the bloodstream through inflamed gums or tiny lesions, traveling to distant organs and triggering inflammation elsewhere. And at night, that's prime time for these microscopic border crossings. You may have even noticed it yourself those mornings when your mouth just feels off. Maybe your breath is unusually sour. Maybe your teeth feel fuzzier than normal. That's not just poor brushing. That's your microbiome throwing a rave while your conscious mind checks out. Want a fringe anecdote? In pre-Columbian South America, some tribes were known to share chewed medicinal bark from mouth to mouth as a form of healing. The belief was that strong mouth spirits could be passed from the healthy to the ill. Historians still argue whether this was purely ritual or an early understanding of microbial immunity. Today, the world of oral probiotics is growing. Supplements and lozenges claim to repopulate your mouth with good bacteria to fight halitosis, inflammation, and even improve sleep. Some dentists are now testing microbiome mapping, swabbing your tongue to analyze your bacterial profile and personalize your dental care. Here's what's important to know tonight. You're not alone in there. Your mouth is alive with tiny allies, frenemies, and straight-up party crashers. And they don't sleep. So as your brain powers down and your breath slows, your oral microbiome begins its nightly dance. Whether it's a gentle waltz or a bacterial mosh pit depends entirely on what you did before bed. Brushed your teeth? Flossed? Sipped water instead of soda? Great, you've set the scene for harmony. If not, well, don't be surprised if your mouth feels like a forgotten compost bin come morning. Still, the body's wisdom is astonishing. Every night, it lets these tiny creatures flourish while trusting that you'll wake up and reset the stage. It's a nightly balance of trust, biology, and a bit of morning toothpaste. And now we arrive at the final secret chamber of your mouth's midnight symphony, the healing work that quietly unfolds as you sleep. Yes, even while your limbs go still, your mind floats through dreams, and your jaw hangs ever so slightly ajar. The cells in your mouth are busy repairing, restoring, and renewing. Let's start with your gums. Those soft pink borders are holding your teeth in place. During the day, they endure endless microtraumas, from crunchy chips, rogue toothbrush angles, stress-induced clenching, and the acid assaults of coffee or citrus. But when you sleep, blood flow to your gums increases, delivering oxygen, nutrients, and growth factors that stimulate repair. This boosted nighttime circulation is part of the body's general strategy. Your parasympathetic system, the rest and digest network, dominates during sleep. That means less inflammation, lower cortisol, and more collagen production. Your gums literally soft heal overnight. Same goes for your oral mucosa, the delicate tissue lining your cheeks, lips, and inner mouth. Any tiny cuts or burns, remember that pizza bite that betrayed you? Begin healing faster than almost any other part of the body. Why? Because oral tissue cells regenerate rapidly. Combine that with enhanced sleep circulation, and your mouth becomes a quiet little biorepair shop after dark. One study even found that melatonin, the famous sleep hormone, has antioxidant properties in saliva and may promote gum healing. So while you're drifting between REM cycles, your body is sprinkling a little melatonin magic right onto your sore spots. Historically, this restorative aspect of the mouth was understood, albeit poetically. Ancient Persian poets referred to the mouth as the temple of morning, where silence gives way to renewal. In some indigenous Australian beliefs, dreams that involved teeth falling out were interpreted not as bad omens, but as signs of emotional shedding and internal growth. Historians still argue whether these ideas reflect psychology or early intuitive health observations. Let's not forget your teeth. Enamel, the hard, glossy armor covering each tooth, doesn't regenerate. Once it's gone, it's gone. But that doesn't mean nothing happens overnight. Your teeth are surrounded by pellicle, a protein layer that helps buffer acids. During sleep, minerals like calcium and phosphate from your saliva are reabsorbed into enamel through a process called remineralization. But here's the twist. If your mouth is too dry, say from mouth breathing or dehydration, this natural repair slows way down. Acidic environments win. That's why dentists stress brushing before bed, not just to remove food, but to reset the chemical conditions for overnight healing. You also experience jaw repair at night. Micro damage from chewing, talking, or unconscious clenching, hello stress, is gently repaired by increased blood flow to the temporomandibular joint, TMJ. That clicking you sometimes hear? It may soften by morning, unless, of course, you spent the night in a gritting contest with your dreams. Want a curious twist? In traditional Chinese medicine, it's believed that your meridian clock hits its liver time between 1 to 3 AMA, time of emotional detox and tissue repair, especially involving the jaw and digestion. They saw a connection between suppressed emotions and jaw tension. Grinding your teeth? That was your spirit trying to chew through unresolved feelings. Historians still argue whether this is metaphysical metaphor or early psychosomatic insight. Then there's the subtle neurological housekeeping, like how the glymphatic system, your brain's nightly cleanup crew, clears out waste and toxins. While this doesn't happen directly in your mouth, the after effects are felt. Brain detox equals less jaw clenching, less tension equals softer tongue posture. Softer posture equals happier airway. Even your immune system gets in on the action. The mouth, being a bacterial hotbed, is under constant immune surveillance. At night, certain white blood cells ramp up, quietly hunting down invaders while inflammation pathways ease off. If you've got an ulcer, a canker sore, or even a sore throat, chances are it'll feel less angry come sunrise. And what about dreams? Believe it or not, oral sensations do influence your dreaming state. Some people report dreaming about choking, chewing, kissing, or even losing teeth, classics of the subconscious. These aren't just random. They're often tied to subconscious feelings of vulnerability, transition, or growth. Your mouth, after all, is where you express words, take in nourishment, and communicate emotion. It's deeply personal, so it makes perfect sense that it shows up when your mind is sorting through its nighttime files. So tonight, as you lay still, remember this: your mouth is not idle, it's healing, regrowing, resetting. Tiny cells are rebuilding soft tissue. Saliva is balancing chemistry. Your breath is syncing with your nervous system. And in the background, your tongue twitches gently, an ancient muscle remembering everything it said and all it's about to say. You don't feel any of it, you just rest. And that, perhaps, is the real miracle. So here we are, your mouth, your breath, your quiet little dream came at the softest part of the night. The deeper layers have settled. Your tongue is still, your jaw released. The spaces between your teeth feel like they've melted into the dark. Your lips, warm and loose, barely touch. You've made it through the microbial murmurs, the tissue repairs, the silent nerve signals, the memory of tastes and tiny movements. Now everything slows. There's nothing to say, nothing to chew, nothing to brace against. The breath through your nose is like a wind brushing soft sand, gentle, rhythmic, whisper light. Behind your closed lips, your mouth becomes more than a space, it's a sanctuary, a place where rest isn't just passive but deeply alive, where healing hums in molecules, where the things you've spoken fade into echoes and new things unsaid gather, quietly waiting for morning. And the sounds around you, let them fall further back. Let the fan's gentle hum become your lullaby. Let your tongue float. Let your cheeks rest. Let gravity hold you. No more swallowing, no more thinking, just warmth, just breath. Let your body keep doing the quiet work while your mind drifts far beyond it. Because sleep isn't escape, it's transformation. And your mouth, it's right there with you every step into that invisible world. Thanks for listening tonight.